My stepson called me mom at his school event. His real mom broke down in tears. Our family had big problems. When Addison's face turned white and then red at the school event, I knew one simple word broke the shaky peace in our new family. What should have been a happy night for Charles showed all our hurt feelings, secret fears, and lines we thought we could keep. Addison's face went white, then red, then looked blank. She shook as she ran to the bathroom. Other parents noticed her. Charles looked like he wanted to hide. Should I have let him call me mom when the teachers were watching? I married Jordan 2 years ago. He is a dad who was divorced before and has a great son named Charles. Charles is quiet and asks lots of questions. He has dark eyes like Jordan and a smile that makes people happy. He was 9 when I joined their family. Before I loved them, I was single and happy with my job in sales. I didn't want a family. Addison, Jordan's ex-wife, lived 3 hours away. She saw Charles every other weekend, as most divorced parents do. Their divorce was bad. Addison wanted to make all the rules at home. Jordan felt trapped. She thought Jordan cared more about work than family. They tried hard to be nice to each other for Charles. Addison was a nurse who helped sick people, but her work often made it hard to see Charles on her weekends. When she was a child, her parents divorced too. She never felt like she had a real home. Her dad married again, and her new stepmom was cold and mean to her. This helps explain why she acted so strong. After being hurt as a child, Addison promised no other woman would hurt her or her son. Jordan thought she tried too hard when she said this. Later, we saw this was a warning sign. I just wanted to make a safe and loving home for Charles. I heard bad stories about stepmoms who did too much or too little, so I let our friendship grow on its own. I never told him what to call me. I never tried to take his mom's place. I just tried to be a nice, safe adult for him. But this should have been my first warning. Every time she picked up Charles, Addison talked about his clothes, hair, and bag. She wanted me to know she noticed small things. His hair looks different, she would say, touching his hair. People saw his new shoes. I took him to my hair cutter who knows how he likes his hair. I buy his shoes a bit big because his feet grow fast. Her words weren't mean, but she showed she knew things about her son that I didn't know yet. She asked about his schoolwork like she knew what the teachers wanted. When he said he liked the food I made, she would nod. Then she would talk about the special dinner they made together last weekend. At first, I thought she was just being a caring mom. Before the divorce, Addison took care of Charles most of the time. It made sense that she saw changes in him. After a few months, her comments got more critical. I think she had a hard time sharing care of Charles with me. When Charles said I helped with his science project, Addison told him she helped with all his past projects. She knew what his teachers wanted. When he came home happy about a new food we tried, she would talk about all the special dinners they had together. At first, I thought she was just being a caring mom. Before the divorce, Addison took care of Charles most of the time. It made sense that she saw changes in him. After a few months, her comments got more critical. I think she had a hard time sharing care of Charles with me. When Charles said I helped with his science project, Addison told him she helped with all his past projects. She knew what his teachers wanted. When he came home happy about a new food we tried, she would talk about all the special dinners they had together. I felt like she was telling Charles I was just temporary and she was here forever. Then something else happened. Charles started telling me things he never told Jordan. He told me about bullies at school, his friend hanging out with older kids, and how he felt scared he wasn't smart. He told me about his hard time with math. I became someone he could talk to about anything. Maybe it was because I'm a woman and could help in ways Jordan couldn't. Or maybe it was because I was new in his life without all the family history. Jordan was happy that Charles felt safe telling me things that made him feel shy. But I became more important to Charles than most stepmoms do. I was part of his support system. When he had bad dreams, he would come to my room. He would ask me to help him practice for school talks because I didn't make him as nervous as his dad. During this time, he never called me mom. Before, when he wanted me, he would just say my name or nothing at all. But we were getting closer in a good way. When Jordan had to work, I went to Charles's school events and soccer games. I would cheer for him and take pictures to show him later. Other parents thought I was Charles's mom when we talked about our kids. I would tell them nicely that I was his stepmom, but most people didn't pay much attention. Meanwhile, Addison's comments were getting worse. After Charles and I talked, she would question him. What did we talk about when Jordan wasn't there? Was I telling him to talk to her about certain things? When Charles told her I helped him understand growing up things he was too shy to ask his dad, Addison and Jordan talked on the phone for 45 minutes about what was okay to discuss. Addison said Charles should wait to talk to her about some things so she could tell him everything. They argued. Jordan pointed out that Charles was helped by having another adult to talk to. Kids don't plan when to ask questions based on which parent they're with, but all this was making Charles nervous. He looked worried when we talked, like he was trying not to cause problems. I tried to stay out of the fight. When Addison made mean comments about me, I would just smile and talk about something else. When she questioned things I did, I let Jordan answer. I felt more like a worker than family. The stress made things hard between Charles and me. I was very careful about what pictures of him I put online. I worried what Addison would think about even small things, like letting Charles stay up late on weekends or giving him ice cream after school. I knew she watched everything we did closely. Jordan saw I was becoming more careful and asked if I was okay. I told him it was hard to just be myself with Charles. I always felt like Addison was watching and judging everything I did. Jordan wanted Addison to stop causing problems, but he was afraid it would make things worse. Maybe I was just too sensitive to all her watching. I tried to tell myself this when Addison started asking Jordan lots of questions about Charles's daily life, what he ate, who helped with homework, how he spent his time. Jordan thought her questions showed she was a good mom, even if there were too many. Before their divorce, he was used to her being very involved in Charles's life. He learned to answer her questions without getting upset. But her questions got worse and more frequent. She asked about things that didn't affect Charles, like our house rules, how we punished him, and even about our marriage. Did we fight in front of him? Did I have friends over when he was there? Did we avoid adult talk when kids could hear? I told my friends I felt judged, but they said I was too sensitive. My friend Rachel said all divorced parents need time to adjust. My sister said Addison would calm down once she saw I wasn't trying to take her son away from her. Everyone made it seem like no big deal. They said new families need time to adjust, but I felt watched in my own home. All her questions made me lose confidence. Things got really bad when Addison started calling Charles directly when he was with us. She asked about his day, what he ate, what he did, and how he felt. These calls lasted 35 to 55 minutes. Charles felt like he was being tested and worried about giving the right answers. One night, I heard him walking around the kitchen while on the phone. He told her what he ate for dinner and if he did his homework before watching TV. When he hung up, he looked tired and stressed, like he just finished a hard test. Then I understood. Addison wanted to watch everything we did. Charles felt he had to be perfect when he was with us to make his mom happy. I just wanted to love Charles and make him feel at home in our family. I had to be careful not to upset Addison. The first big sign of a problem came when I found Charles crying in his bed after a weekend with his mom. He told me his mom was upset because I had been teaching him how to cook basic foods, like eggs, grilled cheese, and pasta. I thought these were good skills for him to learn. Charles wanted to help make dinner, and I enjoyed our time cooking and talking. But when Charles told his mom excitedly that he could make his own breakfast now, she cried. She had planned to teach him those things herself when he was older. Now you rush to teach him things that should be special between a mother and son, she said. Some things should just be from moms and their kids. She said he took something special from her by learning from me instead of waiting for her. Charles was heartbroken that he hurt his mom by learning new things. While crying, he asked if he should pretend he doesn't know how to cook so his mom can teach him, or if he should stop cooking with me completely. This 11-year-old boy was trying to stop growing up to make adults feel better. His mom made him feel like learning new things was wrong because it hurt their special bond. He felt bad about having fun with me. Jordan called Addison to talk about it, but she turned it around on us. She said if I really cared about Charles, I would stay out of things that should be between him and his real parents. She said cooking together was a special mother-son activity. The word real hurt me a lot. Then came the second sign of trouble. Charles started asking confused questions about family. He acted like there was only so much love to go around. He asked if loving me meant he loved his mom less. He wondered if he should feel bad about looking forward to our weekly shopping trips and evening walks. He asked if spending time with me made his mom sad. He seemed worried I might leave if things changed. He asked if I would still be his stepmom if his parents got back together. I told him Jordan and I would stay married, and he seemed relieved. But then he asked if that meant his mom would be sad forever because she lost her family. Kids shouldn't have to worry about such things. It was clear Addison was making him anxious about fitting into both families and having good relationships with adults. The saddest question came one Sunday morning while we made pancakes. He asked if his mom would be happy if I left the family. He wanted to know if Jordan would understand if I moved away to make things easier for everyone. This little boy was willing to give up relationships that made him happy just to stop adults from being upset. Jordan was getting mad too, but he didn't want to start a big fight that might change their custody agreement. He was afraid to make things worse. He had heard stories about exes who try to turn kids against the other parent. But when Charles started getting sick from worry before visits to his mom's house, Jordan knew something had to change. On the morning he was supposed to go to his mom's, his stomach hurt. He missed school the day before switching houses. He seemed nervous even during normal family time, like he was walking on eggshells. I suggested I might do fewer things with Charles until Addison felt better, but Jordan said if we gave in to her, Charles would learn that love is bad and should be hidden. Jordan said we were in an impossible situation. The third sign that something was very wrong happened when Addison showed up at Charles's school without telling us. She wanted to see how he was doing in class. The teacher was confused because it wasn't Addison's week to have Charles, and Jordan hadn't said she could visit. The teacher had been calling a lot to ask about Charles's behavior, grades, and friends while he was with us. The school had to call Jordan to check if Addison could visit. She had also been asking teachers if Charles talked about our house, if his grades were different at his dad's house, and if he ever mentioned me. The school counselor called Jordan to say she was worried adults were using Charles in their fights. They noticed he seemed uncomfortable talking about our home and avoided mentioning me, even in casual talks. Then I realized Addison's problems weren't just about me and Charles. She acted like our home was a bad place that needed watching. She was using other people to find out about Charles's relationship with me. Jordan was angry about the calls and visits. He called his lawyer to talk about changing their custody agreement. They needed rules about checking on Charles at both homes and about school communication. But before they could take legal action, I found something that changed everything. I was organizing Jordan's papers in his office as a surprise. I found a folder called Custody Documents that had fallen behind his filing cabinet. I had never seen these legal papers before. They had the divorce papers and letters between lawyers from before I met Jordan. When they first divorced, Addison wanted Charles to live with her most of the time. The paper said she claimed Charles would be better off living with her full-time. She said Jordan should only visit sometimes because he worked a lot and traveled for business. But what came next made me really upset. Jordan's lawyer said Addison was too controlling and that it was hurting Charles emotionally. Jordan said Addison had mental health problems and was seeing a therapist for it. Addison had to get a psychological evaluation for the custody case. The evaluator said Addison should keep going to therapy to work on her control issues and anxiety. The evaluator was worried she couldn't accept that Charles could form good relationships with other caregivers. Many pages showed that Addison got very upset about normal things. She worried when Charles was with babysitters, made friends with kids whose parents she didn't know, or even got close to his preschool teacher. The evaluator said Addison saw any close relationship Charles had as a threat to her bond with him. The most disturbing part was a letter from Addison's therapist to the court. The therapist said Addison was a loving mom, but had fears of being left alone because of her own childhood. These fears made her try to limit Charles's relationships. Jordan had never told me any of this. The newest paper in the folder was a letter from Addison's lawyer to Jordan's lawyer from 3 weeks ago. It described a new plan to challenge their custody arrangement. Instead of saying Jordan was a bad dad, they would say I was trying to turn Charles against his parents by making him see me as his mother. They planned to use what school staff said, proof that Charles called me mom, and expert opinions about how it harms kids when stepmoms act like moms to show I was crossing boundaries. But the worst part was a note Addison supposedly wrote and sent to her lawyer. It said, "I told Charles to call Anna mom. Anna doesn't know I told him to do this. I hope she's dumb enough to go along with it instead of telling him no. I mentioned this in our phone calls. This proves she's trying to take my place." I sat in Jordan's office trying to understand what I was reading. Addison had tricked her own son into calling me mom as part of her legal plan. Every time Charles called me mom and I smiled or responded nicely, I was falling into her trap without knowing it. His real mom had planned to use the sweet moments I loved as proof I was doing something wrong. When he came to me after a bad dream, called me mom, introduced me to friends as Anna, my mom, or wrote me a Mother's Day card, she was using it. To build her legal case, she was willing to play with her own child's feelings. I took pictures of every paper in the folder. My hands shook as I did it. I needed Jordan to explain why he kept this from me. I also needed proof in case Addison tried to destroy the papers. When Jordan came home that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table with all the papers I had printed. "We need to talk," I said, handing him the papers. When he saw what I had, his face turned pale. Anna, I'll explain, he said. You knew she was making Charles call me mom to build a case against me, but you didn't think I deserved to know? Jordan sank into the chair across from me, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I was trying to protect you, he said quietly. If you knew what she was doing, you would have acted differently with Charles. You might have corrected him or pulled away, which is what she wanted. So you let me think I was building a real relationship with my stepson when I was actually being set up. Your relationship with Charles is real, Jordan said firmly. Addison might have put the idea in his head, but Charles's feelings for you are genuine. Kids can't fake the kind of connection he has with you. But how can I trust that? How can I trust any of it now? Jordan reached across the table and took my hands. Because I've watched you two together for 3 years. I've seen how happy he gets when you enter a room, how he comes to you when he's upset, how he talks about you to his friends. Addison might have suggested the word mom, but she didn't make him love you. I pulled my hands away. Why didn't you tell me about the custody evaluation, about her history of trying to control his relationships? Because I hoped things would be different with you. Her therapist said she was getting better. I thought if she had some space and saw Charles was happy with us, she would accept that he could love more people without loving her less. But instead, she started trying to ruin our relationship. Yes, and I should have warned you what we were dealing with. I'm sorry. I looked at the papers on our table, feeling overwhelmed. There's more, Jordan. According to this letter, she's planning a new custody fight. She wants to claim I'm turning Charles against her. Jordan's jaw tightened as he read the lawyer's letter. This is crazy. Anyone who spends 3 minutes with Charles can see we encourage his relationship with his mother. But we don't have proof of that. Now we have proof that her son calls me mom, which is exactly what she wanted. The implications were staggering. Every natural moment between Charles and me had been turned into a weapon. By responding positively when he called me mom, I had only strengthened Addison's claim that I was trying to take her place. What are we going to do now? I asked. Jordan was quiet for a long time as he studied the papers.
We get our own lawyer, we document everything. Her manipulation, her unapproved school visits, her attempts to control Charles's relationships, and we hope a judge can see through her games. But what about Charles? How do we tell him his mother has been using him as a pawn in her legal strategy? We don't, Jordan said immediately. He's 13 years old. He doesn't need to know his mother manipulated him. It would destroy his trust in all of us. I understood Jordan's point, but keeping this secret felt wrong too. How can we be honest with Charles if we hide this big thing about his mother? So we just pretend none of this happened. We protect Charles from adult problems that aren't his to solve, he added. But we also get ready to defend our family against someone who would use her own child as a weapon. The next few weeks were filled with planning and legal talks. Our lawyer, Patricia, who specializes in custody cases, shook her head after looking at Addison's case file. This is parental alienation, she said, but not the way she's claiming. She's the one who's been manipulating her child's feelings and relationships for her own reasons. Patricia said many parents who have control issues do what Addison is doing. She might make herself look like a helpless mom trying to protect her child from a stepmom who's too involved. She tells Charles to call you mom and then claims you're crossing boundaries. The problem is, proving manipulation is harder than proving the behavior she's complaining about, Patricia said. A judge who doesn't know the whole story might just see a child calling his stepmom mom and think it's a boundary problem, no matter how it started. We spent a lot of time gathering evidence for our defense. We kept records of every positive interaction between Charles and his mother, and all the times we tried to include her in his activities and school events. I knew Addison was manipulative, but I didn't know how to act normally around Charles anymore. When he called me mom, I wondered if he really meant it, or if it was just a habit. Knowing his mother had planned our sweet moments together to use against us ruined them for me. Jordan noticed I was pulling away from Charles and asked me about it. "You're growing distant from him," he said one night after Charles was asleep. "He's starting to notice, and it's confusing him." "I don't know what's real anymore," I said. "How do I respond naturally when he calls me mom when I know his mother told him to do it? Even if she put the idea in his head, his feelings are still real. Look at how he acts around you, Anna. Look at how he comes to you when he's scared or upset. You can't fake that kind of emotional connection." But I couldn't shake the feeling that Jordan was wrong about my relationship with Charles. The next weekend, when Charles was visiting Addison, things came to a head. On Sunday night, he came home looking upset and confused. "Mom wants me to stop calling you mom," he told me directly, using the word that suddenly made me uncomfortable inside. She said it hurts her feelings and makes her think I don't love her anymore. Jordan and I looked at each other. We had been afraid this would happen. Addison had encouraged the behavior, and now she was trying to stop it, putting Charles in a tough spot. Gently, I asked, "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I love her, and I love you too, and that calling you mom doesn't mean she's not my real mom." But she started crying and said that if I really love her, I would understand why it makes her sad. It broke my heart to think this child was being asked to manage adult feelings and pass loyalty tests that would be hard for adults. "What would make you feel better?" I asked him. Charles thought for a moment. "I want to keep calling you mom because that's how I think of you, but I don't want to make her cry anymore." Jordan knelt down to Charles's level. "Buddy, the adults in your life need to handle their own feelings. You don't have to change how you talk to people you love just to make someone else feel better." "But what if she gets so sad she doesn't want to be my mom anymore?" His voice showed how scared he was. Addison had made this boy believe his real feelings were dangerous to the people he loved. Right then, I decided to do something I had been putting off for weeks. "Charles," I said, sitting down next to him, "I need you to know that no matter what you call me, Mom, Anna, or anything else, it doesn't change how much I love you or how important you are to me. And your mother will always be your mother, no matter what anyone does or says." "Really? Really? Adults sometimes have mixed feelings about sharing people they love, but that's our problem to solve, not yours." Charles seemed a little relieved, but I could tell he was still trying to make everyone happy. After Charles fell asleep, Jordan and I talked for a long time about what to do. "We need to tell him something," I finally said. "Not everything, but something. He's carrying so much guilt and worry about his natural feelings. He deserves to know he's not responsible for fixing adult problems." At first, Jordan didn't want to, but he finally agreed that Charles needed an explanation he could understand about why the adults were having such strong reactions to normal family stuff. The next day, we had one of the hardest conversations of my life with Charles. We explained it in simple terms.
We told him that when families change, it can take adults time to get used to new relationships. We told him his mom was worried he might forget she was his mom, and it hurt her to hear him call someone else mom too. We reassured him that it was great to have many people who care about him, and he should never feel like he has to hide his feelings or change how he shows love to make adults feel better. Most importantly, we promised we would be there for him as long as he needed us, no matter what happened with custody or legal stuff. Charles had some questions, but he seemed relieved to finally understand why he had been feeling so anxious. "So it's not my fault that Mom gets sad when I call Anna Mom?" he said. "It's not your fault at all," Jordan said firmly. "Adults are responsible for their own feelings, and you don't have to choose between loving me and loving her. You never have to choose," I assured him. "Love isn't like pizza with only so many slices. You can love as many people as you want without running out." After what felt like forever, Charles finally gave a real happy smile. But our peace didn't last long. Addison was just getting started with her legal plans. Then the backlash began. When Addison found out Jordan had called his lawyer, she accused us of trying to limit her time with Charles. She claimed I was turning Charles against his mother, and that Jordan was helping by not setting good boundaries. All we had wanted was to protect Charles from adult drama. She threatened to go to court to change their custody agreement. Her twisted claims did real damage. Addison was isolating Charles by making him feel bad about caring for me. Instead of admitting she was overreacting, she made it seem like I was the problem. She started contacting other adults in Charles's life, his coaches, teachers, and friends' parents, to express concerns about him when he was with us. She didn't make specific accusations. Instead, she asked leading questions to see if they had noticed changes in his behavior that might suggest problems at our house. People I trusted, who didn't know the whole story, sided with her. Charles's soccer coach mentioned to Jordan that Addison seemed very worried about what was happening at our house. The coach suggested we all talk more. My own mother started asking if I was taking on too much of a mom role too soon. She wanted to check on something someone in Addison's family had told her about boundary issues. Even Jordan's parents started suggesting that everyone should be careful about blended families and respect the feelings of the birth parent. Even though the adults tried to hide it, Charles could feel the tension. He became very careful around me. He was clearly worried his mom would be mad if he showed me affection. I felt like he was trying to erase me from his life to make someone else feel better. Things got more serious when Addison hired a family law attorney and asked to change Charles's custody arrangement. She claimed he wasn't being properly protected because there weren't clear boundaries between parents. She didn't want to reduce Jordan's time with Charles, but she wanted me to stay out of parenting decisions. She wanted all school communication to go through her. Her lawyer said Charles's emotional growth was being hurt by confusion about parental roles and loyalty conflicts. She asked the court to order family counseling to fix these problems. This was about more than just hurt feelings and awkward relationships. It was about legal fees, time in court, and the risk that our family structure could be limited by a woman who couldn't accept that her child could care for more than one mother figure. The custody evaluation process was long and difficult. A court-appointed psychologist had to decide if I was good or bad for Charles. After interviewing each adult separately, watching Charles with both parents, and looking at school records and communications, I sat in a stuffy room trying to convince a stranger that I loved my stepson, that I tried my best to help him have a good relationship with his mom, and that I knew the difference between being a stepmom and trying to take his biological mother's place. At the same time, Charles had to answer questions about preference and loyalty that no child should have to face. Did he prefer his mother over me? Did he wish I didn't exist? Did he ever feel like he had to choose between two adults who cared about him? In the end, the evaluation found no proof that I was harmful to Charles. In fact, the psychologist noted that Charles seemed more nervous when talking about our relationship than about other parts of his life, which suggested he had learned to feel confused about his feelings for his stepmom. The court denied Addison's request and suggested family therapy instead to help the adults strengthen Charles's bonds with his loved ones. Even though we won in court, the main problem was still not solved. Everything changed when I found something no one had told me about. Charles, who was 12, left his diary on the kitchen counter while doing homework.
I saw a page in his neat handwriting where he wrote about his biggest worry. I'm scared my mom will stop being my mom if I show how much I love Anna, but I also worry Anna will leave us like my mom did when she finds out I don't love her enough to make my dad happy. The writing went on to describe his sad attempts to control the feelings of adults around him. He would show different amounts of affection depending on who was watching. He watched his own feelings carefully to make sure he wasn't upsetting anyone by showing too much or too little. This little boy was always worried that his feelings for adults were wrong or even harmful. At just 11 years old, he was putting others' needs before his own true feelings. He was trying to manage adult relationships and stop everyone from getting hurt. After reading this, I knew what had to happen. Which brings us back to that important night at the school event. Charles was showing a renewable energy project at his 6th grade science fair. We had worked on it together for weeks. I have to admit, I was trying to act calmer than I felt. I arrived early to help Charles set up and to calm his nerves about presenting. Jordan was coming straight from work to meet us. When we arrived, Addison was already there, taking pictures of Charles's project and talking to other parents. She greeted us with the same polite but distant manner she had since the custody case ended. Charles seemed nervous about his big night, even though he was trying to ignore the tension between the adults. I decided on a simple plan: help Charles succeed while avoiding any drama that could ruin his evening. While he presented to the judges, I stayed in the background, taking pictures only when Addison wasn't and trying not to draw attention to myself. Everything was going fine until a judge asked why he chose renewable energy. He excitedly started explaining how I had shown him videos about climate change and taught him about solar and wind power. He didn't seem to realize others were listening. My mom really helped me understand how important this stuff is for my generation, he continued, waving at me with clear pride and affection. The word mom hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Addison's face turned bright red before crumbling into complete despair. The other parents who were listening to Charles's presentation looked back and forth between Addison and me with confused expressions. One careless word ruined Charles's excitement about his project. He looked panicked as he realized what he had said. Addison quickly got up and hurried to the restroom. As she left, I saw her shoulder shaking. I followed her to make sure she was okay and found her crying in the hallway. When she saw me, her sadness turned to anger. "How could you let this happen?" she cried desperately. "He's my son. I'm his mother. You can't take that away from me." "We didn't plan this or encourage it," I tried to explain. "I never asked Charles to call me mom." But Addison wasn't listening. She said I had intentionally broken her heart, stolen her special moments, and confused Charles about his real family. "He's been calling you mom behind my back, hasn't he?" she said. "You've been letting him think of you as his mother, instead of teaching him that I'm the only one who should be called mom." Part of what she said was true. When Charles started calling me mom sometimes when we were alone, it felt natural and sweet, so I didn't correct him. but I had never suggested or demanded it, and I certainly never meant for it to happen in front of Addison. I tried to comfort her by apologizing that she was hurt and assuring her that nothing could change the fact that she was Charles's mother. But my attempts to reassure her seemed to make things worse, as if I was suggesting I was trying to replace her. For about 20 minutes, we went back and forth, with Addison's emotions swinging from anger to tears while I tried to find a solution. Other parents were starting to notice, and I was worried about how this would affect Charles if the scene continued in such a public place. Finally, Jordan found us in the hallway. Addison went to him and demanded he do something about me hurting their son by letting him see me as a substitute mother. She wanted me to understand that I was crossing boundaries. Jordan tried to calm things down by suggesting we talk privately after the science fair. But Addison was impatient. She wanted immediate reassurance that I would stop letting Charles call me mom, and that we would set clearer limits on my role. To calm the situation and get through the rest of the school event, I reluctantly agreed to ask Charles to use my first name instead of mom, especially when his mother was around. Jordan looked unhappy with this compromise, though he didn't challenge me in front of Addison.
We went back to the science fair and got through the evening, but the damage was done. Charles seemed upset that his proud moment had turned into family conflict. He stayed quiet and withdrawn the rest of the time. As far as I could tell, Jordan was angry with everyone, and Addison stayed across the room from me. When we got home that night, Charles was angry with me for giving in to Addison about the name. With tears streaming down his face, he asked, "Why do you care more about her feelings than about me? I thought you loved me, but now you're saying I can't even call you what feels right because it makes her sad." Jordan was equally upset. He said that by giving in to Addison's claim that my relationship with Charles was harmful, I had proven Addison's point. He thought I had taught Charles that adult issues were more important than his feelings, and that I had sacrificed our family to please his difficult ex-wife. But I couldn't stop thinking about the diary entry I had read about a little boy who felt he had to control everyone's feelings and keep the adults in his life happy. I wondered if asking him to change what he called me in certain situations was really trying to avoid loyalty conflicts. By the time our discussion ended late in the night, all three of us were emotionally and physically exhausted. Something important changed in our family that night. Even though it wasn't like the resolution you see on TV, we couldn't go back to pretending that Charles's difficulty forming genuine connections with the people who cared about him had nothing to do with Addison's insecurities. Here's what actually changed. The next day, Jordan called Addison. He told her he understood how she felt about the mom situation, but he wouldn't let her worries about Charles's relationships or how he showed affection affect Charles's ability to form connections. He explained that Charles's choice to call me mom sometimes was his own decision, not something we had told him to do. He said trying to control how Charles expressed his feelings would only cause more distress and confusion. He suggested family therapy sessions with all of us. But he also made it clear that he would strongly fight any future attempts to legally limit my role in Charles's life. At first, Addison resisted, but after the custody evaluation, she realized her tactics hadn't worked and that Charles would suffer more from continued conflict. But she insisted she would never be okay with Charles calling anyone else mom. So she reluctantly agreed to try counseling. The counseling sessions were difficult at first, but turned out to be helpful. Addison realized it wasn't fair to make Charles deal with her fears of being replaced since she had experienced divorce and step-parents as a child herself. I was able to explain that I never meant to diminish her or compete with her. Instead, I wanted to understand what made her feel insecure so we could all have genuine relationships with Charles. Most importantly, Charles learned that he didn't need to hide his feelings or act like an adult to keep peace in his family. It was the adult's job to resolve their conflicts without involving him, and he was free to love us in whatever way felt natural to him. Even now, Charles sometimes calls me mom, and sometimes Anna. It depends on his mood and the situation. Addison still feels uncomfortable when he calls me mom in front of her, though she no longer makes him feel bad about it. As a family, Jordan and I have learned how to support Charles's relationship with his mom while keeping our own family strong. This whole situation started with a science fair project that won second place in the district. Even though things were complicated between his three parents, Charles was proud of his achievement and even prouder that we were all there to celebrate with him. Our blended family isn't perfect, but it works because it lets our child feel loved by more than one parent. Nothing can change the fact that Addison is and always will be Charles's mother. But now that we're a family, he can call me whatever he wants because our relationship is real and genuine. He doesn't need anyone to tell him to call me mom. He does it because he wants to.